Have you ever wondered what life was really like in the 18th century? No electricity, no factories, no supermarkets, no hospitals the way we know them today. People lived harder, slower, and often shorter lives than us. But their world shaped the modern one we live in now. Let's take a deep dive into the realities of daily life in the 18th century. The struggles, the routines, the food, the travel, the diseases, and the way people survived from morning until night. Morning reality. Survival. First, in the 18th century, the majority of people were farmers. More than 80% of Europe's and Asia's population lived in villages, not cities. Their day began at sunrise because there was no artificial light. The first priority was survival, fetching water from wells or rivers, feeding animals, and starting fire in the hearth. Breakfast was extremely plain, often just bread and ale. Yes, even children drank weak beer because water was unsafe. Tea and coffee were luxuries only for the rich, imported from overseas. Clothing reality. Status versus survival. Clothing was a mirror of your class. The poor wore wool or linen that was patched and reused for years. Shoes were expensive. Some children grew up barefoot. The wealthy wore silk, lace, and powdered wigs, showing their social rank. There were no fashion brands for ordinary people. For peasants, clothes were practical, to protect them from cold, heat, and work. For nobles, clothes were political, a statement of wealth and power. Work and economy. The harsh truth: life meant work. Farmers worked from sunrise to sunset. Women managed households, and children were put to work from as young as 7. There was no childhood as we know today. Survival required every hand. Business was risky. Trade was done through markets, fairs, and caravans. In cities, small workshops and guilds controlled crafts like blacksmithing, weaving, and carpentry. Banks existed, but only for the elite. The poor survived on daily wages or barter. Food reality. Rich versus poor. Food showed the biggest difference between classes. Poor people ate bread, porridge, cabbage, potatoes, onions, and sometimes fish or cheap cuts of meat. Hunger was common. Famines killed thousands. Rich families had access to imported sugar, tea, coffee, wines, spices, chocolates, and multiple-course meals. Banquets displayed status, not just taste. There was no refrigeration, so people preserved food by salting, drying, or pickling. Winter months were especially harsh. If harvests failed, entire villages could starve. Health and disease. The brutal reality. This is where the 18th century shows its hardest truth. Life expectancy was only 35–40 years for most people. Infant mortality was extremely high. Many children didn't live past the age of 5. Diseases like smallpox, tuberculosis, plague, and dysentery killed millions. Medicine was primitive. Doctors used bloodletting, herbs, and guesswork. Hospitals were dirty and surgery was done without anesthesia. Only the wealthy had some access to better care. Travel and communication. Travel was slow and dangerous. Roads were muddy and robberies were common. A journey of 100 kilometers could take several days. People used horses, carriages, and ships. Communication was equally slow. Letters took weeks or months to arrive, and printing presses were just spreading information. Imagine waiting months to hear news from a family member. Social life and entertainment. Despite hardships, people did find joy. In villages, evenings were spent around fires, telling stories, singing, and playing simple games. In cities, taverns and coffeehouses were popular, places for news, gossip, and debate. Religion shaped community life. Church bells marked time, festivals, and even politics. For most people, religion was central. It guided laws, morals, and education. Gender roles and family: men worked in fields or trades. Women managed homes and raised children. Families were large, not by choice but because many children didn't survive. Marriage was often practical, to secure survival, land, or alliances. Women had little independence. Education was rare for them except in wealthy families. Yet women played critical roles in maintaining households, farming, and even running small businesses. Night and rest. When the sun went down, so did life. With no electricity, only candles and oil lamps provided light. Families gathered for simple suppers, prayers, and storytelling. Work like sewing, mending tools, or reading was done by firelight. By 8 or 9 p.m., most people were asleep, preparing for another long day. Lessons of reality. The truth is, life in the 18th century was harsh, unequal, and uncertain. Most people lived in poverty, suffered disease, and worked endlessly just to survive. Yet, they built communities, traditions, and values that lasted centuries. The difference between rich and poor was enormous. While the elite enjoyed luxury, art, and global trade, the majority struggled daily for bread and survival. But perhaps the most striking reality is this. Despite limited knowledge, no technology, and countless hardships, people of the 18th century carried forward resilience, faith, and the determination to survive. Closing words. So when we look back at the 18th century, it's not just history, it's a mirror showing us how far humanity has come. From disease to medicine, from slow letters to instant communication, from starvation to global food supply, the world has transformed. Yet the human spirit, the will to work, and the need for community remain the same. This was life in the 18th century, a world of hardship, survival, and stark realities that shaped the foundation of our modern lives.